It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day where the sunlight streams through the kitchen window just enough to make your coffee steam swirl like smoke in a quiet ritual. I was flipping through the headlines of a tattered newspaper, savoring a rare moment of peace, when my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I immediately recognized the name flashing on the screen. Camila, my younger sister. My heart sank before I even answered. Her voice was cold, clipped, and unnervingly calm. "I sold the house," she said. "I emptied all your accounts. Everything's signed and in motion. Don't try to contact me. Goodbye." She hung up. 30 seconds. 30 seconds to erase 3 decades of trust, love, and shared history. I sat frozen, coffee cooling in my hand, staring at the black screen. Then a laugh escaped me, deep, ironic, and surprisingly freeing. Camilla didn't know that the house, the money, none of it was as valuable as she thought. The real assets, the things I had quietly secured over the years, were completely out of her reach. I leaned back against the counter, letting the weight of the betrayal settle while my mind raced. I thought about all the years I had sacrificed for her, paying for tuition, covering rent, buying the clothes and tools she needed to chase her dreams. I had worked every late shift, skipped meals, and endured endless exhaustion just to make sure she never went without. And now, in a single phone call, she had attempted to erase all of that, assuming she could manipulate me with fear and surprise. I realized in that moment that it was time to act, to establish boundaries that would protect me and the life I had built. The kitchen felt too small, too bright, almost claustrophobic. I could hear the distant traffic outside, the normal rhythm of the city mocking the storm inside my head. I replayed her words over and over. Sold the house, emptied my accounts, everything signed. Don't contact me. I clenched my jaw and let the irony of it hit me fully. She thought I would crumble. She thought I would be helpless. But I wasn't so easy to break. I took a deep breath and tried to steady my racing thoughts. "Camila," I muttered under my breath, though she couldn't hear me. "You have no idea what you just tried to do." My mind shifted through every memory. Her tantrums as a child, the subtle manipulations I had missed, the moments when I had forgone sleep and meals so she could thrive. I had protected her for decades, but I had never given her the right to destroy me. Not now. Not ever. I poured a second cup of coffee, my hands trembling slightly, and as I stirred, I allowed myself a fleeting smile. There was power in awareness. There was freedom in knowing that the next steps were mine to command. I could act, strategically and deliberately, and she would discover, much too late, that I was not the sister who would collapse under a sudden storm. "Where are you listening from?" I asked aloud to the quiet kitchen, breaking the fourth wall, as if speaking to someone beyond the walls of my home. I want to know who's out there with me, feeling this, witnessing this moment. I imagined voices from across the world, from cities in the US, London, Paris, perhaps Berlin, all pausing to consider the magnitude of betrayal and the courage it takes to confront it. I glanced at the small stack of papers on the counter, old receipts, bank statements, and the deeds I had kept hidden. Every number, every document, was a piece of the plan I would now put into motion. Camilla had believed that her audacity had caught me off guard. She thought her gambit would leave me defenseless. But the house, the money, the real power, it was all quietly mine, shielded from her reach. She had underestimated me, and that was a mistake she would come to regret. I placed my phone on the counter, letting the call log remain visible, a silent reminder of the moment everything changed. The sunlight shifted across the room, highlighting the edges of the papers like a spotlight. My pulse steadied. I had clarity now, and with clarity came purpose. I would act, I would protect myself. I would reclaim control, not just over my finances, but over the relationship that had always been defined by sacrifice and manipulation. That was the moment I realized that betrayal, no matter how sudden, could be a catalyst. I had 30 years of love, dedication, and foresight at my disposal. Camilla had thrown a challenge my way, believing it would topple me. But I was ready. The story was just beginning, and I would write the next chapter on my terms. I still remember my life at 20, just out of college, thrust into a world that demanded I be more than a student. My parents were aging, their health fragile, and Camilla was still so young, her needs immediate and relentless. I took on every role I could, juggling shifts at the cafe downtown, helping at the law office in the afternoons, and running an online shop late into the night. Sleep was a luxury. Meals were often skipped or stolen in bites between tasks. But I told myself it was worth it. Camila could never lack anything, not on my watch. Even as she grew, I continued to provide. Tuition, clothes, the latest gadgets, experiences I couldn't afford myself. But I rarely enforced rules or consequences. I feared her resentment, feared that a firm no might make her hate me, or worse, feel abandoned in the way my parents had often warned. I thought I was protecting her, nurturing her independence through comfort, but in truth, I was training her to expect compliance, to know that tears and pleas could bend my will. It began subtly. When she was 7, she wanted a new backpack. I told her she needed to wait, save allowance money, or trade old supplies. She pouted, lips trembling, eyes wide with what she knew were persuasive powers. "But Maya, everyone has one. I can't be the only one without it," she insisted, her voice almost a whisper of urgency. I sighed, my resolve cracking as I saw the tension in her small frame, and eventually bought it. The next request, a toy, a book, a class trip, followed the same pattern. Each time, I questioned my own toughness, fearing the strain on our bond more than the financial stretch it caused. Teenage years intensified the pattern. Camila learned how to appeal to my sense of guilt, my desire to be seen as a good sister, a protector. When she wanted to join an exclusive art workshop, she feigned disappointment, claiming everyone else was going except her. I rearranged my schedule, skipped a few shifts, and made the payment, silently scolding myself for weakness. Her ability to read me, to anticipate my emotional reactions, grew sharper. I realized she was not just asking, she was manipulating, honing skills that left me consistently yielding. The psychology was subtle but potent. Each plea was wrapped in vulnerability, in an innocent voice that hid the sharpness of intention. She didn't need to raise her voice. A glance, a soft sigh, a carefully timed pause was enough. I would catch myself calculating the consequences of refusal, the potential tears, the silent resentment, the long-term effect on our relationship. And each time, I gave in, reinforcing her behavior without realizing it. I remember one evening, during a particularly grueling week, I discovered she had taken a few dollars from my purse to pay for a workshop I had explicitly said she couldn't attend. When confronted, she cried and begged, painting herself as desperate, deprived, and somehow wronged by my refusal. My first reaction was frustration, but it quickly shifted to shame. How could I have let her feel deprived? How could I have been so harsh? I told myself quietly that a compassionate sister doesn't punish, doesn't restrict, doesn't withhold. I gave her the money back and promised she could attend the next class, reinforcing the pattern yet again. Looking back, I see now that my choices, my constant yielding, were the foundation for a dependency that went unnoticed for years. I believed love meant surrender, sacrifice, putting her needs above mine at every turn. Every misstep she made became my fault. Every plea became a test of my commitment. And as she grew into adolescence, the power dynamic was clear. She could influence my actions with mere words or silent pressure. I was creating a pattern that she would rely on for a lifetime. Even at the time, I sensed the tension between protection and control, but I didn't know how to balance it. I feared that enforcing limits would fracture us, yet I now understand that by never setting boundaries, I allowed a sense of entitlement and subtle manipulation to take root. Every success she achieved, every desire she fulfilled, was built on my silent, constant compliance, my unacknowledged exhaustion, and my fear of confrontation. By the time Camila reached her late teens, I was exhausted, yet her dependence and expectation of compliance had become normalized. Each time I hesitated, paused, or considered denying her, a wave of guilt or fear of loss washed over me. The consequence of refusal seemed unbearable, and so I continued the cycle, nurturing ambition, facilitating desires, but failing to instill responsibility, independence, or the understanding that actions carry consequences. When Camila reached her early 20s, she began talking incessantly about her dreams, launching a cosmetics brand that would supposedly revolutionize the industry. Her eyes sparkled when she described products she had never developed, contracts she had never signed, and customers she had never served. At first, I listened with cautious optimism, hoping her ambition would lead her to independence, but the pattern soon became unmistakable. "Look, Maya," she said one evening, leaning across the kitchen table with a practiced smile. "I've found the perfect location for the studio. We just need a little help with the initial supplies. Everything else will pay for itself once the first batch sells." Her tone was so convincing, so warm, that it was impossible not to feel complicit in her excitement. I nodded, the old reflex of helping her kicking in, ignoring the small voice in my head, warning me that the numbers never added up. The investments escalated. She needed funds for raw materials, rent for a studio space in a trendy neighborhood, and even salaries for employees she hired without experience, just to make the operation look legitimate. She presented it as a shared venture, as if I were her partner, as if my support was essential to her success. "You've always been there for me," she said, touching my hand lightly. "This will be our chance to build something extraordinary together." That hand, that smile, the appeal to loyalty, every part of her performance was meticulously crafted to manipulate me. I found myself signing checks, transferring money, approving purchases, all the while watching the supposed business grow on paper. I visited the studio once and saw boxes stacked neatly, labels printed professionally, employees pretending to work. The illusion was flawless, and yet something in the air felt wrong. The accounts didn't match, the cash flow made no sense, and Camilla was always just out of reach whenever I tried to review the ledgers. There were moments when the tension in the room became almost unbearable. One afternoon, I paused a payment transfer, hesitant to authorize another large expense. Camilla's expression shifted subtly, a mixture of disappointment and subtle accusation. "Maya, you're hesitating? I thought you trusted me. We can't move forward without you." The words stung. The implied guilt was almost tangible. I felt the old pressure, the fear of letting her down, the awkwardness of neighbors and colleagues aware of my involvement. I transferred the funds anyway, my stomach twisting as I realized I had been drawn into another layer of her control. It wasn't just about money, it was about power. Each request, each justification, was a calculated move to make me feel responsible for her supposed success. Her arguments were always wrapped in concern for me. "You've always believed in me. Don't you want to see me succeed?" I began to notice the patterns, the repetition of urgency, the emotional leverage. Every plea came with a subtle suggestion that refusing would mean betrayal, that my love was conditional. I remember sitting in my living room late at night, reviewing invoices and receipts, trying to trace where the money had gone. The sums were astronomical for a startup at that stage, and much of it went to extravagant, unnecessary purchases, high-end packaging, promotional trips, consultants who never delivered results. I realized she had constructed an entire narrative designed to make me feel complicit, while she quietly siphoned my resources. The realization hit me with a mixture of shock and clarity. Everything she had asked for, every cent I transferred, had been manipulated, misused, or squandered. And yet, I felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming control, establishing boundaries, and protecting myself from further exploitation. I began to consider strategies, legal protections, and financial safeguards, all while maintaining the facade of support, so Camilla would not suspect that I had recognized the deception. I understood, in that tense, electric moment, that if I hesitated or confronted her too soon, the illusion would collapse, and I could lose everything without recourse. I had to act carefully, methodically, and decisively. Camilla's confidence was her weapon, and my composure would be mine. The stakes were higher than ever, and I knew that this was the turning point, the moment I would stop being a passive participant in her schemes and begin to assert the authority and protection I should have exercised from the beginning. I knew I had to act before Camilla could realize how aware I had become. The stakes were higher than ever, and there was no room for error. I scheduled a meeting with Elena Rivera, a lawyer whose reputation for precision and discretion was unmatched. In her office, we mapped out every move I needed to secure my finances and assets. We opened new bank accounts under my name, structured through a small corporation I controlled, transferring all remaining funds quietly. Every cent Camilla believed she had access to was now safely out of her reach. We crafted contracts that looked routine on the surface, but contained hidden clauses, legal traps disguised as operational agreements. Each clause was a calculated move to make Camilla feel in control, while ensuring that the moment she attempted to access the funds or the property, it would trigger legal obligations she hadn't anticipated. My plan was to give her the illusion of power while keeping the real authority in my hands. The psychological warfare was as important as the legal safeguards. I began recording every conversation, archiving every text message and email, every subtle manipulation or request for money. When she called with her latest demand, I let her speak, letting the words hang in the room while I listened, calm and calculating. "Maya, I just need a bit more to finalize the packaging," she said one evening, voice sweet, almost coaxing. I smiled quietly, replying, "Of course, Camila. Let me review the numbers first." Every phrase she uttered was stored, documented, and would serve as evidence of her ongoing financial manipulation. I visited the supposed studio she claimed was operational. The storefront looked polished, but the reality was different. Supplies were scattered haphazardly, employees unsure of their tasks, budgets mismanaged. I pretended to examine ledgers while mentally noting every inconsistency, every inflated invoice, every unnecessary purchase was a piece of proof that Camilla was siphoning my resources under the guise of a legitimate venture. The tension was palpable. I felt the familiar pang of guilt she always triggered in me when I hesitated, but this time I held firm. There were nights I stayed awake, reviewing spreadsheets, making calls to banks and service providers, ensuring that every loophole she might exploit was closed. The sense of control returned slowly, replacing the anxiety that had haunted me for years. I realized that patience would be my greatest weapon. I couldn't rush her into confrontation. She had to take the bait, unaware that I was already several moves ahead. One afternoon, she called demanding an urgent transfer to cover what she described as overdue marketing expenses. I let the phone ring a few seconds longer than usual, noting the sharp edge in her voice, the hint of desperation beneath her practiced calm. "Camilla, I'll handle it," I said softly, letting the words imply consent while mentally preparing the countermeasures. Every emotional flicker, every veiled threat, became a signal I stored, each one building the case I would use when the time came to reveal the truth. I also began to subtly test her, providing minor funds, but under conditions that forced her to reveal inconsistencies. Her reactions were telling: frustration, irritation, veiled excuses, all perfectly documented. I realized that her overconfidence was her weakness. She truly believed I was blind and passive. The more she assumed control, the more evidence I collected. The combination of financial restructuring, legal groundwork, and psychological observation gave me a profound sense of clarity. I was no longer the sister who bent under every plea or threat. I was the orchestrator, controlling every variable, prepared to expose the manipulation at the precise moment that would maximize accountability and reclaim what was mine. By the time I finished the preparations, I understood fully that the battle was not just about money. It was about authority, dignity, and asserting my right to protect myself. Every detail meticulously documented, every financial transfer secured, every word recorded, I felt a rare calm. Camilla could continue her performance, but the real game was mine to win. Patience, strategy, and resolve would decide the outcome, and I was ready. Finally, the moment I had been preparing for arrived. Camilla stepped into the office, her smile forced, her confidence barely masking the tension I had seen creeping into her posture over the last few months. I gestured toward the table where I had laid out every piece of evidence I had meticulously gathered. Bank statements, recorded calls, screenshots of messages, copies of contracts, invoices, and detailed notes documenting the money she had misused. I could feel her eyes flicking nervously over the documents, but she tried to maintain her composure. "Camilla," I began, my voice steady but firm, "everything you've done to manipulate me, to take control of my resources, is documented here. Every request, every transaction, every attempt to make me doubt myself or hand over more than necessary." I watched as her confident mask began to crack. Her hands fidgeted slightly, and her eyes darted toward the floor, betraying the panic she tried so hard to conceal. "You don't understand," she started, her voice trembling. "I was just trying to make things work. I thought it was all for us." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my gaze unflinching. "For us?" "No, Camilla. You were using my trust, my generosity, and my love for you to fund your dream, your cosmetics brand. You treated my resources as if they were yours to control, and you did it under the guise of necessity, under the pretense of shared ambition. That ends today." Her face paled as I began to explain the contracts, the financial structures, and the legal safeguards I had put in place. These accounts, these assets, are under my full control now. Any attempt to divert funds or claim ownership without consent will have immediate legal consequences. You no longer have the power to manipulate, to coerce, or to exploit me. I let the weight of the words settle in the room. I could see the recognition in her eyes, the realization that her assumptions of control were entirely wrong. Camilla swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. Maya, I didn't think... I thought I could rely on you to... I didn't know. I know, I interrupted softly but firmly. You thought I would bend, that I would let you take advantage of my trust forever. But I've learned. I've prepared. And now, the control rests with me. I paused to let the gravity of the statement sink in, to make sure the lesson was clear. This isn't about revenge, it's about boundaries, responsibility, and respect. If you choose to manipulate again, the law will enforce the consequences you've ignored for so long. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw fear. Not just of legal repercussions, but of the reality that she could no longer dictate our relationship through guilt and deception. I had taken the power back, but I also wanted her to recognize the opportunity to learn from her actions. I wanted her to understand accountability, the importance of honesty, and the consequences of abusing trust. The meeting ended quietly. Camilla left without another word, her usual certainty replaced by a tentative, awkward awareness of the truth. I remained in the office for a few moments, letting the relief wash over me. I felt the weight lift, the years of manipulation, the pressure, the constant tension, all dissipating. For the first time in decades, I felt free. I took a deep breath and glanced at the documents one last time. The boundaries were set, the assets protected, and the lesson clear. This was not just about money. It was about reclaiming my dignity, establishing authority over my own life, and refusing to be a victim of manipulation. I had acted with patience, strategy, and resolve, and the outcome confirmed that preparation and clarity are the most powerful tools against exploitation. Thank you so much for listening to this story from start to finish. I hope it gave you something to reflect on about trust, boundaries, and standing up for yourself. If you've stayed with me until the end, please leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can hear more stories about real-life challenges, empowerment, and the strength it takes to reclaim control of your life. Your support means the world and helps me continue sharing these stories.